The tribunal hall on the Velrani homeworld was packed. Captain James Carter stood in the designated witness area, acutely aware of the hostile eyes watching him. The chamber was designed to intimidate, soaring architecture, hundreds of observers in tiered seating, the tribunal judges elevated on an imposing platform. James was here as a witness, not a defendant, but the atmosphere suggested that distinction might not matter much. The case involved accusations of espionage during the recent war, claims that human military personnel had violated humanitarian protocols to gather intelligence. James had been called to testify about his service as a combat medic during the conflict. Then Commander Cale entered the chamber. The crowd's murmur shifted to something more intense. Cale was a legend among the Velrani, a military officer whose tactical brilliance had turned multiple battles, whose name was spoken with reverence by allies and fear by former enemies. She'd been instrumental in several major victories during the war. She was tall even for a Velrani, carried herself with absolute confidence, and her uniform displayed decorations that marked her as one of the most distinguished officers in their military. She took the witness stand, and the tribunal's lead judge addressed her formally. "Commander Cale, you've requested to testify regarding Captain James Carter's character and actions during the war." "I have, Your Honor." Every eye in the chamber fixed on her. James felt his pulse quicken. He'd never met Commander Cale, had no idea why she'd asked to testify about him. "I know this human," Cale began, her voice carrying absolute authority across the silent chamber. "I encountered him during the war. He claims to have been a non-combatant, a medic serving under humanitarian protocols, but I stand before this tribunal to testify about his true character." The crowd leaned forward. This sounded like damning testimony from someone who would know the truth, who'd fought against humans, who had no reason to protect them. James braced himself for the accusation. "This human was present during one of the war's most brutal engagements," Cale continued. "The Battle of Keswick Prime. I was there. I saw what he did." She paused, and the silence was absolute. Then Commander Cale stepped down from the witness stand, walked directly across the floor to where James stood, and knelt before him. The tribunal hall erupted in shocked gasps and immediate chaotic murmuring. Velrani didn't kneel. James knew that much about their culture. It was a gesture reserved only for life debts, for acknowledging someone who'd saved your life when you had no right to expect mercy. It was sacred, binding, and never performed lightly. Commander Cale kneeling before him made no sense. The lead judge called for order, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Commander Cale, explain yourself immediately." Cale's voice was steady, clear, carrying to every corner of the now silent hall. "I accused this human of having questionable character. I started my testimony making it sound like condemnation. I misled this tribunal deliberately because I needed everyone here, every witness, every judge, every observer, to hear the truth of what Captain James Carter is." She looked up at James, who stood frozen in shock. "4 years ago, during the Battle of Keswick Prime, I was commanding the Velrani forces in that sector. We were losing. My unit was cut off, surrounded by human forces. I ordered a retreat but was wounded during the extraction, took shrapnel from an explosion, couldn't evacuate with my soldiers. I was left behind in a collapsed building, bleeding out, expecting to die or be captured for interrogation." The tribunal was absolutely silent now. This wasn't known. Cale's injury and near death during Keswick Prime had never been public information. "This human found me," Cale continued. "Captain James Carter, serving as a combat medic with the opposing forces. He knew who I was. My face was on enemy intelligence briefings. My tactical decisions had cost his side thousands of casualties. He had every reason to let me die. Every tactical reason to call his forces for my capture. I would have been a massive intelligence asset. Personal reasons to walk away. My orders had killed his comrades." James remembered that night. The ruined building, the enemy commander bleeding out in the rubble. The split-second decision he'd made. Instead, he treated my wounds, stabilized me with the medical supplies he was carrying, left me water and additional medical equipment. And then, Kale's voice carried something like wonder. He radioed my forces with my location, anonymously, so he wouldn't be identified as the one who helped an enemy combatant. He saved my life and asked for nothing, expected nothing, simply did it because I was dying and he was a medic who'd sworn an oath to help the wounded. The tribunal was processing this. The lead judge spoke carefully. "Commander, you're saying this human had you at his mercy and chose to save you rather than secure a strategic advantage for his military." Yes, he violated his orders. Helping enemy combatants was explicitly forbidden. He risked court-martial. He gave up a massive intelligence opportunity. He did all of this for an enemy who would have killed him without hesitation if our positions were reversed. Kale looked around the chamber. I survived because of his mercy. My forces found me because of his anonymous call. I recovered and continued serving my people, but I never forgot. I spent years searching for the medic who saved me. I only knew his voice from the radio call, had only seen him briefly while dying. When I finally identified him months ago through voice analysis and service records, I learned he was facing accusations of espionage, that his character was being questioned by this tribunal. She returned her gaze to James. I asked to testify. The tribunal believed I was here to condemn him based on how I started my testimony. I deliberately misled everyone because I needed you all to listen, truly listen, to what comes next. Kale's voice rang out across the silent hall. This human showed mercy to an enemy who deserved none. He chose compassion over tactical advantage. He saved a life he had every reason to let end or to exploit. That choice defines his character more clearly than any accusation or defense possibly could. She addressed the tribunal directly. In our culture, the acknowledgment of life debt requires public witness. It must be performed before those who can testify to its truth. I kneel before James Carter to acknowledge that he holds my life, that his mercy when I was helpless saved me, that I owe him a debt that cannot be repaid but must be publicly recognized. The lead judge looked genuinely conflicted. "Commander Kale, do you understand the implications of what you're doing? Acknowledging life debt to a human in public regarding actions taken during wartime, this has massive political ramifications. The military will. I understand completely, and I don't care about political ramifications." Kale's voice was absolute. "I care about honor, about truth, about acknowledging that this man's compassion accomplished what fear and force never could. It showed me that enemies can choose mercy. That strength isn't just about winning, but about choosing humanity even when it costs you everything." James finally found his voice. "Commander, please stand. You don't owe me this. I did what any medic would." "No," Kale interrupted firmly. "Most medics would have followed orders, would have called for capture and interrogation, would have secured the tactical advantage. You chose mercy over duty. You gave me my life back when you could have taken it or exploited it. That debt must be acknowledged." She remained kneeling, her posture showing no shame or weakness, only determined honor. The lead judge consulted with the other tribunal members. Finally, he spoke. "Commander Kale has invoked one of our oldest and most sacred traditions. The acknowledgment of life debt cannot be refused or dismissed. It is witnessed and recorded. Captain James Carter, do you accept this acknowledgment?" James looked down at Kale, still kneeling, and understood this wasn't about what he wanted. This was about her honor, her culture's understanding of debt and mercy. "I accept," he said quietly, "though I didn't save you seeking recognition or debt." "I know," Kale said, rising finally. "That's exactly why the debt is binding. Mercy given without expectation of reward is the purest form of strength. You showed me that strength when I most needed to see it." The tribunal conferred again. When they returned, the lead judge's tone had shifted. "In light of Commander Kale's testimony, This tribunal finds that the accusations against Captain James Carter are without merit. A decorated war hero has testified under sacred oath that he showed mercy to enemies during combat, prioritizing humanitarian values over tactical advantage. This is the opposite of espionage. All charges are dismissed. The chamber erupted, some in approval, others in confusion or protest. But the decision was final. After the tribunal formally concluded, James found himself in a private antechamber with Cale and a handful of her military colleagues who looked somewhere between shocked and concerned. "Commander," one of them said carefully, "do you understand what you've done? The political implications of acknowledging life debt to a human." "I understand perfectly, and I'd do it again." Cale looked at James. "I apologize for making it seem like I was condemning you. I needed the tribunal's full attention, needed them to feel the contrast between what they expected and what the truth was." "You didn't have to do this," James said. "I helped you because it was the right thing to do, not because I wanted recognition or debt." "I know. That's exactly why I had to acknowledge it. You acted without expectation of reward. That makes the debt more sacred, not less. In our culture, mercy given when you expect nothing in return is the purest expression of strength." "I was just doing my job." "No," Cale's interruption was gentle but firm. "Your job was to treat Allied soldiers. Helping enemy combatants violated your orders. You made a choice: compassion over duty, mercy over advantage. That choice saved my life and changed my understanding of what enemies can be." Over the following weeks, the implications of Cale's public acknowledgment rippled through diplomatic channels. As a life debt holder, James had standing in Velrani society. He could call on Cale's assistance, influence, and support. More broadly, her testimony had shifted how Velrani viewed humans, particularly regarding the concept of showing mercy. "In our culture," Cale explained during a private conversation, "strength is everything. Military power, tactical dominance, the ability to defeat enemies. But you showed me a different kind of strength, choosing mercy when violence or exploitation would be easier. That's harder. That requires more courage. I just did what felt right. And that's the most powerful thing any of us can do." Cale paused. "You changed my life twice, once when you saved it, again when I acknowledged that debt publicly. Before that moment, I was bound by tactical thinking, by the belief that winning was all that mattered. You showed me something different, that how we win matters as much as whether we win." 6 months after the tribunal, James and Cale appeared together at a diplomatic conference. Her presence as his advocate, the result of the publicly acknowledged life debt, had transformed his standing in interstellar diplomacy. But more importantly, they developed genuine friendship. "You know," Cale said during a break in the proceedings, "people still ask me why I did it, why I knelt before you publicly when I could have acknowledged the debt privately. And what do you tell them? That mercy shown in private deserves acknowledgment in public. That hiding debt or gratitude perpetuates the idea that compassion is weakness. By kneeling before you in front of everyone, I showed that acknowledging someone else's strength, admitting you owe them your life, that's not weakness, it's honor. You're more brave than I am. I just helped someone who was dying. You helped your enemy when helping me could cost you everything. That's not just anything, that's everything." Cale smiled slightly. "Besides, kneeling before you was the easiest thing I've ever done. You gave me my life back. Acknowledging that publicly was the least I could do." The story had transformed both of them. James's reputation had shifted from accused spy to recognized humanitarian. Cale had become an advocate for diplomatic solutions over pure military force, citing her own experience as proof that mercy could accomplish more than dominance. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd made a different choice that night," James reflected. "If I'd called for your capture like orders demanded. You would have secured a tactical victory. I would have been interrogated, perhaps executed. The war would have continued exactly as it did, because one commander's capture doesn't change everything. But mercy changed things. Mercy changed me, which eventually changed how I approach conflicts, which influences how I advise our military and political leadership. Your choice to save one dying enemy has rippled outward in ways you'll never fully see. Kale looked at him directly. That's the power of compassion. It doesn't just save one life. It changes the person whose life was saved, and through them, it changes how they interact with the world. The alien woman who'd knelt and begged forgiveness, though forgiveness wasn't quite accurate. She'd acknowledged debt and expressed profound gratitude, had shown everyone watching that true strength sometimes requires humility, that admitting someone else's mercy saved you isn't shame but honor. James had shown mercy when no one was watching, expecting nothing. Kale had acknowledged that mercy when everyone was watching, transforming a private act of compassion into a public testament to what humans were capable of. Two people from opposite sides of a war, bound together by the choice to show mercy and the courage to acknowledge it. Sometimes the most powerful thing you could do was kneel, not because you were forced to, but because you understood the value of what you'd received and wanted the world to know it. And sometimes the most powerful thing you could receive was someone's honest gratitude, their public acknowledgement that your choice to help when helping cost you everything was worth honoring. The tribunal that had started with accusations of espionage had ended with a decorated war hero kneeling before a medic, proving that compassion could accomplish what fear and force never could, building bridges between enemies and showing that mercy wasn't weakness. It was the truest form of strength there was.